Hello. I want to talk about revenge and other. And I want to do a follow up because I've done videos recently about my ex husband, his new wife, and my experience during my separation and divorce with her and him and such. And the normal human reaction when you have, you know, been with an abuser, are continuing to be abused after the divorce is done, and especially when they recruit their new spouse. That's always fun. But I want to talk about an experience I had, which was actually very surreal. I remember I never watched a show, but there was a show called Revenge, and I think it's this girl, her, I don't know if her family was murdered, but she was, the whole show was about revenge. She was going to get revenge on her family's killers. I don't know the show, so please don't quote me verbatim on this. But anyways, anyone who has been abused, you know, has gone through the gone through any sort of trauma at the hands of another person who has chosen to intentionally hurt them, mentally, emotionally, physically, sexually, etc. It is a normal human reaction to want to seek revenge against that person. And when you are divorced and you have children with them, you know eventually you're going to see them. If you are still in a relationship with your children and they have a relationship with your ex, you are going to see your ex, whether it be at a wedding, at the hospital, when your grandchildren are born, graduations, any sort of event where it is in a public space, where it has to do with your children and their accomplishments or celebrations or whatever. When you know you're going to have to be in the same room with your ex and possibly their spouse, and most likely their spouse, because your children say, I'm inviting dad, I'm inviting mom, we're all going to be together, and it's in a smaller space than a gymnasium. Maybe it's, let's just talk about a wedding. And eventually you're going to have to see your ex, and you're going to have to play nice. And, well, let's just back up. And you're going to see your ex, and you have been hurt by this person, and you have been through the fire, and in dealing with mine, he's really self-conscious and low self-esteem. He doesn't like attention to be drawn to him. So the last thing he would ever want is for us to be in the same room and for me to bring attention to him in a negative way. So I thought for a long time, what am I going to do when I see him? What is the absolute best thing I can do is number one, I can embarrass him. I can open up this Pandora's box and let everything spill out and let people know. And that's what I thought about for a long time. But then I don't know what happened. Maybe life happened. Maybe my focus happened. I think it's the focus. But I started to, go to therapy, get healing, focus on me, focus on, like I said before, filling up my buffet with positive and healthy things. And I don't know what happened. I think it was the disconnect, because I disconnected from them. I built the wall and I set a boundary, and I said I'm no longer going to allow them to have access to me, because my children disconnected. And so because I wasn't around my children, I wouldn't be around them. So there was a disconnect. So I focused elsewhere. And I said to myself, I am going to go to therapy and just focus on myself, and that's just the way it is. And so my focus turned from wanting to get revenge because I disconnected from them. They no longer had access to me. They no longer could hurt me. So the strikes stopped happening, and I just remember, because I'm a veteran, he's a veteran, and we both live within an hour from one another, so we both go to the same VA. But the VA is a really big place. And you have, I think there's 4 elevators by the A wing and 4 by the C wing. I forget. I don't know. But I don't go to the VA very often because I don't have appointments very often. It's just the way it is. So I had to go to my appointment, and I don't know what set of elevators I was by, but I pushed the button and I'm waiting. I'm the only person waiting. And I had gone up, I went up to, I don't remember what, but I pushed the button to come back down. And the door opens, and who do you think is standing inside the elevator door by the panel where you push the buttons? But my ex-husband. I'm like, oh, I'm like, oh, okay. And the best thing, the best thing, I'll tell you about the best thing in a minute. The elevator doors open, and I said, oh, hi. And he said, hi. And I said, long time no see. And he said, yeah. I said, what's it been, like 10 years? He said, yeah. And I was like, oh, okay. And I thought, this is interesting. And he stood by the panel, and I went to the back, and someone else was in there, and this woman. And I said, oh, that's my ex-husband. She said, really? And I said, yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. And he rode down and got out. And I watched him walk away because, I was just thinking. And it was interesting because, my daughters had disconnected. My youngest had a couple of kids. And I wanted to, and part of me said I kind of want to run after him and say, can I please see pictures of my grandkids? Can you please let me know what's going on? Could you please help repair this relationship with my girls? Please, please, please. Well, what's interesting is as I watched him walk away, he was kind of hunched over. And he looked real downtrodden. He didn't look happy. He kind of walked like almost with his head down, like as if he was ashamed of something, And I'm like, he looked like an old man. He just looked old and almost, I'm not gonna say beat down, but he looked like he was carrying a weight on his shoulders. So I'm like, oh, okay. Like, oh, and that's the way he looked. And all I know was that after I got over the urge to run after him, so I could beg him, please find some kindness in your heart. So please let me see pictures of my grandkids. Please tell me about my kids, isn't that? Because he has a relationship with them. I resisted that urge. And I stood there for a minute, and I realized that after everything I had been through, I took and I took an internal evaluation of myself, and I said, well, when I saw him, I didn't feel anything towards him. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel mad. I didn't want to hit him. I didn't want to kick him. I didn't want to strangle him. I didn't have feelings at all towards him in a negative way. I wasn't anxious. I didn't want to seek revenge. I simply didn't have a feeling. And I remember him walking away looking so, bent over. And I said, I won. I won because he no longer has that grip and control over me. I was like, this is amazing. I can't tell you the sensation you feel after you've been through something like this, and after your overwhelming desire to get back at them, after that no longer has its grip on you, you sit there and you're like, wow, it really was something. I can't really explain it. I just want to say, how did I get to the point where I was no longer filled with so much. I was no longer filled with that. I think what it did, like I said before, have stated this in the past, I had to stop focusing on them and start focusing on myself. I had to disconnect from them. They no longer had access to me, and I really had to go to a lot of therapy. I had to talk to people. I had to join groups. I had to start focusing on myself. I had to turn the mirror back towards me and just look in the mirror and say, what can I do for me today? And so it's I don't think it's a forgiveness aspect. In my personal opinion, anyone who causes intentional harm to another human being, animal, etc., does not deserve to be forgiven. They simply deserve to be disposed of. You dispose of them, allow them to sit in their choices, and then you focus back on you and you forgive yourself. Number one, in many situations, I had to forgive myself for choosing to be with this person who treated me so horribly. I had to forgive myself, and because I chose this person in my life. And then I said I had to forgive me, and then I had to do the work to figure out why I chose him in the first place. And what about me did not allow me to see the warning signs, and to open my eyes and to realize this was not a person I should have ever been with in the first place. But I was not in a good place. If you are feeling worthless, you choose someone who will treat you as such, and that's a bad place to be in, because there's no shortage of people that are out there waiting to be with women who feel worthless, who feel less than, because they can control you, and you do what they want, you take them back, you get abused by them, they say they're sorry, it won't happen again, and you choose to stay, because there's no shortage of people with a feeling of worthlessness, and other people who will continue to make them feel worthless. So I had to forgive myself. I had to dig deep. I had to figure out why I had chosen this person, and I had to do the work so I could choose better. So one day, if you grab a hold of yourself, set boundaries between you and your ex, stop playing the game with them, and say, I'm no longer going to be a part of this, and start focusing on yourself, start digging deep, start going to therapy, start doing whatever you have to do. Eventually, when you see your ex, you'll just pity them, and that's just the way it is. I wanted to cover this because I thought it was important, and I hope everyone has a great day, and we'll talk with you soon. Bye-bye.